Hi, I'm Amanda Skelton, an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator. Today I'd like to show you how to make this lovely card. So the idea of this card is to show you how to use the new blending brushes. So I'm doing this design with the Dragonfly Garden bundle. So you've got the stamp set and then you've got this really nice sturdy punch as well. So we're going to make use of those, and I want to just show you how you can use your blending brushes in order to make the background. So what you'll need for this is a piece of whisper white cardstock. So that's basically a piece of half a piece of A4. So that measures 5 6/8 by 8 1/4 inches, and then we're going to score it halfway along at 4 1/8. So that will be your card base, and then a piece of card for the front panel. And that needs to measure 5 5/8 by 3 7/8, and then just a piece of scrap card as well in order to stamp and cut off the punch our dragonfly out. Okay, so that's what we'll need. So the first thing we're going to do is to do the background. So let's just get these things out of the way. So well, before we do that, first of all, what we're going to do is cut out the aperture from the front. Once we've cut out the aperture from the front layer, we can then work out where we want to do our colour brushing on the back. So I have done a circle as my aperture, but there's no reason why you can't have an oblong or a square. Nesting dies, so Stampin' Up do the nesting circle dies and the square dies and oval, and they all are really good for having all the different sizes. So I've got a circle die here. It measures about 3 inches diameter, so that's probably about the size you want, whether it be a square, 3 inches by 3 inches square. Probably wouldn't go much bigger than that, otherwise you don't end up with very much of a frame around it. I'm positioning mine towards the top so that I've got an area here to stamp the flowers. So I need to put this on my stamping cut and emboss. So I'm going to put this one through. That's all we need that one for. So now we have, keep the piece that you've cut out because that'll be really good for another project. So now we have our aperture. So now what you want to do is position that on your card, on your base card, so that you've got enough of a border, an even border. And then what I do, just to make sure that because I don't want to colour over the edges, otherwise you're going to see the colour here. So I just want to make sure that I get ink blend enough of the area so that you can see it all the way around, but not too much so that it goes over the edges. So just take your pencil, work out where your top layer is going to be, and literally just draw a circle. And then I just also draw lines top and bottom, left and right, just so you know where you don't want to go across. Okay, if you've got some scrap like printer paper, then I just create a mask, and this just stops me from going over the edges of the card, so I can see where my pencil lines are. So I'm just going to make sure that I'm within those, if I can move it. And then I've just used washi tape, which is really nice low tack, so I'm going to make sure I go within the lines, and then just place that. Again, I've got my line here, so at the bottom you've got quite a big area, so you don't need to worry about it too much. And then right hand side, again, make sure that you don't go over the edges. And at the top, again, you've got a bit more space to play with. Okay, so the colours that I've used, and I'm going to use the same colours as I've used here, is saffron. And I've used real red and then also a bit of cherry cobbler just to make it a bit of a darker colour at the top edge. Okay, so you can see I've used this before. So just take your blending brushes. I've got a blending brush for each of the colours, and like if you're using blues and greens, I'd probably have a blending brush maybe for one sort of colour family. These are packs of 3 that you can get from Stampin' Up, and they're £11.25, so just over £3 per brush, and they do give really nice coverage. So you just want to tap it on your ink, just gently rub it on your side piece of paper. So I'm going to do yellow at the bottom, and then you just want to do it in very small circles, and then just work it in to your circle. Make sure you go over the edges, especially at the bottom, so that you can make sure you get a really nice coverage. Okay, and like I said, I just tend to work in circles, and it just gives a really nice subtle coverage. Okay, probably go more than halfway, because don't forget you're going to go over it with the red, so you want to make sure you've got a nice way to blend it. You don't want to just have a sudden line where one starts and one finishes. Okay, so that's the yellow done. Now I'm going to use real red, and I've got a different brush for this one. And again, just start from the top. You start from the outside edge, then you won't end up with a really big thick blob from the brush. Okay, and then just work it down, overlap your yellow, and you'll end up with your orangey sort of mid colour. And these are really nice brushes, they're really soft, so you don't end up sort of dragging on the cardstock. Okay, so I've got some good colour on there. The more you sort of layer it on, the darker it will get, so you can play with that until you get the depth of colour you want. And then because I'm still using red, I'm going to use the same brush I've used, and I'm going to then use cherry cobbler, and then I'm going to add a little bit of detail around the top edge, and that's just going to give it a little bit of a darker edge at the top. And then again, just when you haven't got much ink on it, just blend it around, and it'll just merge it nicely into the colours you've already laid down. Okay, and even though we did a pencil mark, once you've added your colours, you won't see it, so that will be fine. Okay, so that is pretty much our background colour done. Okay, so we can take off our mask. So there you can see we've got our area there. So now if we get our aperture back, you can see that that is just got our nice colour in there. If you want to, you can get rid of your lines. So I'm just going to rub off my lines on the side and the top, just so that I haven't got those showing in case I don't quite line up the edges again as I did originally when I drew the lines. Okay, so next thing we want to do is we can do our flowers. So we're going to do our flowers on the front. So we're going to use black ink, normal Memento black ink, and I'm going to use the really nice sort of tall flowers. So I'm just going to, actually sometimes it's easier if you do it this way, you can see where you have and haven't inked. Make sure you've got something underneath, and also with the last section as well, make sure you've got something underneath, so that if you go over the edges, then you're not going to go onto your table or anything, so make sure you've got a nice piece of card. And then I've done sort of 3 flowers. Ink it up in between each time because the colour will come off and you'll want to re-ink it so you get a nice strong colour. So just work out where you want to have them. And then the final one. Over there. Okay. So we're finished with that one for now. Okay. So what I did for colouring these in is I have got an aqua painter, an aqua brush, which again Stampin' Up do. If you haven't got one, you can use just a what can you use? A paintbrush, a date paintbrush, just dipped slightly in water, just so it's a little bit damp. But then what you can do is you can just take a little bit of your colour off of your ink. Make sure your brush isn't too wet, otherwise it'll make your card too wet and it might buckle. But you can just add your layers here, as you can see here. So I'm doing the yellow. I'm trying to pick out the yellow from the background. But these aqua painters are really good for sort of getting a water colour or a colour wash look. Especially if you've got an area that isn't a very big area to colour, because you've got a really nice fine point. These are one of the older ones actually, when they only did sort of like the paintbrush style. They now do the aqua painters, aqua brushes I think they're called, and they now have, I think it's a set of 3, and they've got a wide brush one as well. So you can do a really nice sort of wide brush across as a background, which looks really nice. So you get the idea of what we're doing here. Okay, so we're nearly done. Just the last one. And then if you're finding that your brush is drying out, so these, it's actually got a reservoir, so you can actually have water in the bottom, and then it'll keep the brush moist for you. Like I said, you don't want it to be too wet. Practice on a scrap piece first. I find that actually all I did was wet the end of this. I haven't actually got any water in the reservoir. I just literally wet the end of the brush for this, and then it picks up a nice amount of ink from the pad, and it doesn't buckle the actual card underneath it. But it depends what you're using. If you're using this on a watercolour card, then you can of course use more water and get a bit more of a washed out look. Okay, so the other colour I've used is Bermuda Bay, and that's the colour I'm going to use to colour in the leaves. Now all you need to do for this is just sort of colour, and that gets rid of all your colour, and then you can just pick up your next colour. So you can see that it's just picking up a nice amount of ink. It really does give it quite a nice watercoloured and natural look to it actually, and you don't even have to be too worried about if you're going inside the lines or not, because it's sort of very much sort of brush stroke look. If you want a paler colour, then just don't keep on loading your brush up so much with the ink. Quite quite like the stronger colours, so that's what I'm doing. Keep on loading up the colours. Alright, nearly done. And you can paint in as much of this as you want. I quite like quite a monochrome for this one, because we've got the nice coloured background. Okay, so again, I'm just going to get rid of the colour off of there, or you can run it under the water, but even just doing that, you can see now it's pretty much running clear. So that's really good. Okay, so we've got our base, and we've got our detail on the front. So what we can do now is, you may still be able to see your circle underneath there. Like I said, by the time you put your top layer on, you definitely won't see it. But that might give you a bit of a guide if you want to stamp anything as a background. So again, using the Dragonfly Garden, I'm going to use these sort of tiny little butterflies on here. I'm going to ink it up in real red. And even though we've used red on here, when you stamp on it, it'll come out a much stronger colour. So let's just put some over here. And again, you want to make sure you don't come over the edges. Okay, so just got some detail there. And I also want a sentiment. So the sentiment I've got here is for a true friend. But there's lots of different sentiments in this section, actually, in this set. You are an inspiration, and may good things grow all year long, and thank you for your kindness. So you want to find something that's going to fit nicely in your aperture there. In fact, I think I might have a thank you on this one. No, I won't, because I haven't set it up. Okay, so you are for a true friend. So again, I'm using the real red. I can see just faintly where my outline is, and I'm going to do this on top of the yellow so that it will show up nicely. You just want to get it centred. Okay, so there you got your sentiment. So all we need to do next then is the dragonfly. So you want a piece of scrap card. Mine went flying on the floor just now. Okay. So I've got my dragonfly stamp. I'm going to, I don't know if you can see on here, but I've actually got the outline in Bermuda Bay even, and I'm going to then use the blending brushes to colour it in. So if I use this first, so we're going to use the punch. And you want to make sure that when you do your image, you want to stamp it at the bottom edge of your card, because that's the way it's going to go into the stamp, into the oh, I can't get my words out today. Way it's going to go into the punch. Okay, so if I show you, all right, so this will also punch out the small flower, small dragonfly as well. So if I show you, whenever you punch most things out, there's normally some kind of edge to it. You can keep this one for later, or you can use it in the project if you want to colour it in. So as you can see there, you've got a white edge. By using the blending brush, you can, if I can find the right one, I think that was the right one. So I'm going to use the Bermuda Bay again. It's the same colour that I used to ink the outside. And I'm just going to use it to gently colour in. Just gives it a really nice soft hue. And the good thing about doing this then is it obviously goes around the outside and you don't end up with that white edge. So that's quite a nice way of getting rid of the white edges. So you can make that as dark as you want, or you can have it rainbow colours, or you can do whatever colour inspires you. Okay, so I think we're pretty much ready to make it up now. So what we want to do is we want to get some sticky pads, and I'm just going to stick them on to the back side of the front layer of the card. So I'm going to put some bits at the side as well to support the edges. Piece there, piece there. And then I think I'll have one right at the top as well. Okay. Actually, I'm going to put a piece at the bottom. You just want to make sure that it's nicely supported once it's placed on your base card. Okay, so that's going to go on there. And then we've got our butterfly. No, we haven't got a butterfly, we've got a dragonfly. And then I'm going to place it on there. So as you can see, that's at a different level to that. So I'm going to put a piece of foam on the front part of the butterfly. And then I'm going to just put a little bit of glue on its tail, and the tail's going to be at that level, and then it just lifts it up so it stands nicely. Okay, so we can just take off our protective films. Easier said than done sometimes, this. Wouldn't mind, but I've actually got nails. This is where you regret putting quite so many pads on the back of your layer. Right, nearly there. Nearly there. One last bit. So you want to make sure it's centered, make sure that you don't end up with your bits of ink showing. That looks good. Just give it a little press down. Okay. And then the last thing you want to do is add your dragonfly. Yay, I said dragonfly, not butterfly. Okay, and I'm just going to use a bit of liquid glue. After I've taken off the protective strips, I'm just going to put a little bit on its tail, just so that it helps it to stick on there, and then I'm just going to place that on there, and then just press his tail down, and then that's him done. Okay, so there you have it. Really nice colourful card, incorporating the Dragonfly Garden bundle and using the new blending brushes that you can then use to get these lovely background colours. So it's just really nice to have some really nice sort of backgrounds that you haven't necessarily had to use card for. You can, or coloured card or DSP. So yeah, so I hope you like that. As always, you can find the products at amandascraftedcards.stampinup.net, or you can contact me or leave a message on my YouTube video, and I'm happy to come back to you and contact you. Take care. Thank you very much.